Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, this episode is backed by popular demand. I love talking with Rob Mack, and I heard back from many people that they wanted to hear more as well. So you are in for a great treat with this episode, and I hope that you love it. And if you listened to the podcast last week, you heard me give an announcement that I am going to be taking a hiatus during the summer. I am doing some really good practices of self-care and practicing doing less and being more. And so I hope that this inspires you to do the same. And I still hope that we can stay connected. So be sure to follow me on Instagram. And if you'd like to receive my weekly newsletters that come out every Monday that are full of value-add tips and tools of how to bring more mindfulness, meditation, awareness practices into your life so you can be happier and more present and more fulfilled, so you can be living the authentic life that I know that you're craving. There's a link in the show notes for you to get on my email list. And with that, enjoy this episode with Rob, and I look forward to being back in September with amazing new interviews because I've already recorded some of them. Oh, and one last thing, if you are interested in joining me on retreats, there are 2 retreats coming up, one which is going to be in September, so be sure to take a look at my website. Link is also in the show notes. It's a women's retreat to Sedona, Arizona. And of course, my amazing relationship retreat with my fiance, Dr. John Schinnerer, which is taking place in April 2023 in Costa Rica. Spots are limited for both retreats. Links for more is in the show notes. All right, enjoy this episode. And I encourage you to also subscribe to the podcast so you can be notified when new episodes come live. Okay, with no more announcements, here's the conversation with Rob and I. Hey everyone, welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so excited to have my friend Rob Mack back on the show, actually by popular demand and not just from my request. I got such great feedback from our last conversation. Not only was there so much nuggets of wisdom, great energy and flow, but I know people got so much out of it. They're like, I want to hear more from him. I'm like, so do I. So here you are.
Gosh, I feel so deeply grateful and honored to be back again. And tell me more, tell me more. Yes. Stroke my ego. Kidding.
Well, I could stroke your ego by saying one of the listeners reached out to me and said, oh my God, I sent Rob's book to my son years ago. And it was so impactful and powerful. And now he's like talking to you. That's amazing. So it was really neat for me to see the people who were in my circle who had already known about you, who values your work and your offerings into the world. And then for them to see like our intersection come together and feel that energy and that vibe that I know elevated me for days. Like that conversation was just, we talked about a little bit before we hit record, just it's so soul fulfilling, right? It's connection, it's energy, it's vibing on the same frequency that we know not just we want, but like our listeners want. This is what everyone needs.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And just so you know, I got a very similar response from all the people that know me, my friends and family and other colleagues and clients. And they said, oh, Rob, that was one of our favorite conversations ever. Like, you all should continue doing conversations, having conversations and keeping that conversation going because it was so powerfully uplifting, not only for me and for us, but also for other people. And it's a conversation that I really missed and lacked as a child and in young adulthood. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that's a large reason I was so deeply depressed and suicidal and just unhappy because there was something deep inside me that wanted both expressed or seen or felt or shared. And I wasn't quite able to get it. So yeah, is like, I live for these conversations.
I do too. And I think every one of us has that need to have that level of connection, even when we don't realize it. right? I mean, some people are really fearful of connection. It's anxiety provoking to be vulnerable, it feels exposing. It can feel, anxiety provoking when someone sees you when you don't really want to be seen, but yet we're all wired for connection. And that's going to look different for different people. But I think people like you and I who are doing the work that we're doing, this doesn't often, sometimes, because we talked about a moment ago offline how it does. When we're in the right zone, it doesn't feel like work. When we're in service to others, and when we can be on that frequency with clients, with people that we're supporting, like that's the sweet spot.
Absolutely. You're just in flow state. So tapped in, tuned in, turned on, and engaged, absorbed, and consumed with what you're doing. You don't even know or recognize that it's work. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And you're also so much more creative and productive in that conversation and with that connection. So you're right about that. And it's a great sort of telltale sign of whether or not you're in your sweet spot or not, just based on that alone, right? It's like, man, this is the kind of conversation that I always feel like I'm in my sweet spot, and it goes so quickly and it happens so easily and effortlessly. And then there are conversations that for me are much more difficult, and not just because they're uncomfortable because of the topic, but more of sort of, a question of whether the connection is there or if you're vibing on the same wavelength. But yeah, it's I think worth paying attention to.
Yes. Well, and this is something I want to delve into in our conversation today, because first of all, I think you and I could talk for hours. So I think anyone who gets to tune into one of our conversations is just lucky to be able to, be a part of our listening squad here. But one of the things that I think is a great extension from where we left off last time, which was kind of some of the grander themes around mental health, positive psychology, going from those big shifts of depression into cultivating the tools to live a more happy life, right? And it's Mental Health Awareness Month, so this is a great way to do that. But I think what I want to carve out the space for today is, what about people who aren't depressed, people who aren't ridden with anxiety or suicidality or addiction, and are just depleted by fucking life, depleted by what's going on in the world, depleted by their job, their day-to-day, and even people like you and I who love what we do and are still depleted by what we do at times.
Yes.
Right? So it's like taking from this macro of our last call or, conversation, and bringing it now to the micro and the nuance of, I'm a happy person, I have fulfilling relationships, and I'm fucking depleted and exhausted and drained. And that was actually me talking first. That wasn't conceptual. Like, I am depleted, exhausted, and drained, and I'm doing the work. And so I'm living it and being in it and guiding it, because this is my authentic self. I'm no higher than anyone else. I'm just practicing maybe a little bit longer. So what's your response to all that?
Oh, I love that. It resonates so deeply. It does. It feels like living with one foot in each world, right? Where you're so deeply grateful about being in demand, let's say, and having great relationships and having people that care about you and love you and having friends and having a full life. We all want to have a full, rich life, but also, yes, without question, it can be extraordinarily depleting. And you can find yourself, trying to consistently pour from an empty cup, right? And so it's a common experience. I know that I've had that experience. I mean, you and I talked about, the number of clients that we have, and we want to have everyone in our practice and we want to help everyone. And that's not always the wisest, or most self-loving or other loving approach in the world, right? And so it can be a little challenging, without question. There's a huge opportunity wherever there's a challenge, but to sort of lean in to a wiser and smarter and, dare I say, lazier approach to life and to work, especially when you find yourself depleted and burnt out.
Yeah. I've been really noticing the levels of how depletion shows up for me. There's like the physical exhaustion of, I've just had 8 clients in a row. And ironically, it's physical, yet I've been sitting all day. Like, so, the irony or the paradox of you sometimes think more movement is exhausting, but also no movement is exhausting. So I think there's the tangible things like our to-do list, our day-to-day life. And for many listeners who I know are like busy moms, that to-do list with our kids, like we're constantly giving to others. So it feels selfish to be able to give back to ourselves. And I know that's not true of just mothers. And And I've been really focusing on the energetic exhaustion or depletion. So I want to share a little bit, but I'm curious what that, when I say energetic exhaustion, like what does that bring up for you?
A number of things. There's a qualitative and a quantitative element. So I might say there's an objective element and a subjective element. And the quantitative element is maybe doing too much in general, but then there's doing too much that is outside of my sweet spot or core competency or my competitive or comparative advantage. Those are just business terms for meaning I don't particularly love it. It doesn't come to me particularly easily. There's that, right? And then there's the subjective experience, which is like, sometimes that can boil down to, or qualitative experience, that can boil down to not just doing too much of it and doing too much of it outside of this sweet spot of yours, but also the ways in which you do it. And so some days you're just depleted already and or you're distracted already. And so I think it's like sort of like managing both the sort of objective, like what am I doing in the world piece of it? And then there's the subjective pieces with like, what am I doing with my focused attention and energy on the inside, even when I'm doing this thing that I usually love so much. So I think that's what it sounds like to me. What does it sound like to you?
I'm working with a coach right now who's helping me shift my business model to help me stay more in that sweet spot. And I think she named it best when she said, it's not about moving from energy or effort. It's about moving from essence.
Love,
so good.
I
know. And so I've been really paying attention to, am I moving from effort where it feels like a little bit of a push for the output? Or am I moving from that soul space where it's in full flow? And to really try to find the things that I can be more in essence from, where it feels really aligned and authentic and juicy and delicious and still fully giving of everything I have. It just doesn't feel like work in those moments. Versus the effort or the energy is like, oh, okay, fuck, I gotta do this social media post. I have to do this. It's the have tos, right? That's to me the energy, and the effort is that the shoulds and the have tos. Versus the essence is popping on Instagram and say, hey guys, I just want to share with you, like I did this morning around recognizing that self-care looks different. And this past week, my self-care has meant stillness, not activity. Right? Sleeping in versus getting up and exercising, and honoring that that's me knowing myself, and then wanting to share that authentically without feeling like, oh, I have to do a post about this because I have to. It's the have tos, right? And I think the challenge for so many of us is figuring out, well, shit, I have a lot of have tos. I have to do all these things. How can I move through it with greater ease when it's still a have to?
Boy, there's so much there. I mean, we could unpack that in several seminars and workshops. I mean, like I'm reminded of a scripture, not by power or might, but by the Spirit alone. And I'm also reminded of, like Abraham Hicks' work. I, really fell in love with Abraham Hicks when I was like really struggling early in my life. And they always talked about inspired action, like inspired in spirit, aligned, right? So it's
I love that.
Find alignment first. And then act, find alignment first, and then have a conversation. Find alignment first with yourself, capital S, and then do what you're going to do. And you'll probably find that even in the midst of having that conversation or doing what you need to do or want to do, that you'll have to realign over and over again, right? And so, that's what it feels and sounds like to me, which is like alignment over achievement and letting alignment drive achievement, right? It's
alignment over achievement. Yes. And that can show up in your career, that can show up in your relationships, that can show up in parenting, that can show up in self-care. Like, I think that shows up in all the aspects that we're wanting to attend to.
That's right. And a huge piece of it, to your point, is like, and it's easy to fall into the trap of either routine or living a script that is either not your own or was your own at some point in time, but is no longer right for you. Right. So, and a real commitment. I mean, and it requires some work to sort of trust the wisdom of your body, the wisdom of your intuition, the wisdom of your true self and your essence. So yeah, and you can only really learn to trust it as you practice trusting it. And so that's the challenge, is that you sort of create the path by walking it.
Well, and I think that's where we can peel back those layers around getting to core beliefs, mindsets, narratives, because the challenge, like everyone could agree, yes, I want to move from essence, not effort. I want to be aligned over achieve. But the thing to help actually have you walk the path is the belief of I can do that, or the belief of that's possible, or the belief of I'm still good enough or worthy of achieving that, like, or maybe not achieving is the right word, since I'm trying to go for alignment over achievement, but you know what I'm saying. I think that it's, our narratives that get so stuck in the way of stepping into that as a way of being.
Ooh, a way of being. That's precisely it right there. You're right about that. And it's important to remember, to your point, that, first of all beliefs are limited. Some beliefs are a lot less limited, right?
Mm-hmm.
All beliefs are an approximation of truth, but they're never actually truth. They're just a model for understanding truth. And the most limited beliefs are still just beliefs, and a belief is nothing but a thought you've practiced for a period of time. And so if you've practiced your way into not believing in yourself, or you practice your way into believing that you have to do all these things that you really don't want to do in order to be successful, you can certainly begin to practice the new, more supportive, constructive, happier, healthier, more harmonious thought that will eventually become a belief that you can then use to drive your life. Right. So yeah, it's like really.
So a belief, Rob, I love this. A belief is simply a thought that you've practiced.
Yes. And a thought can be dropped. Or replaced.
And there's a lot of things that we used to practice that we don't want to practice anymore. I used to suck my fingers. That was a practice. I don't want to do that anymore. But it served me at a time.
Yes. Which is another great point to make, right? Joy, it's like, it's easy to get into this place where you can beat yourself up or judge yourself for some limiting belief or behavior that you continue to participate in. But it did serve us at some point in time. And just that we've come to a place now where we recognize it's no longer serving us in the way that it once did. And so we can let it go from a place of like almost positivity instead of a place of
I was going to say gratitude.
Gratitude, even better. Yes. Yeah,
thank you for serving me at what you once did. I no longer need your services, Mr. Thought or Miss Thought or belief or
Yes.
practice, right? I know it kind of makes me think of, well, maybe not so much of, but like when we go through changes, how we can get stuck on how hard it is to change, or be grateful that we have the awareness of what we no longer need through the change. One of my favorite Dr. Seuss quotes is, "Don't cry that it's over, smile that it happened."
Okay, did you just read my mind? I mean, did you, like, it's amazing. Every time I have these conversations with you, I'm like, she's literally in my head. That's unreal. I was literally thinking of that Dr. Seuss quote. I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the other things that I've been doing, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this is actually also through the help of my coach I'm working with, is realizing, especially people like you and I who are in service, who I think feel things deeply and can pick up on people's energy deeply, and sometimes in a way that's not serving, because we can soak it in, right? I'm making assumptions about you, so I'll speak for myself. I can easily take things in from others if I'm not careful. And we think of energy being like this reciprocity, almost like a circle, right? I give to you, you give back to me, which when it's in flow, it's a positive upward spiral. If just one of us is a negative energy, then it becomes a downward negative spiral that's gonna seep into other areas. So I've been working with this idea of it more being like an infinity symbol, where it's not so much that infinity meaning it goes on forever, but really that there's this intersection point. And this mantra that I've been working with is, when I'm in a situation in which I feel depleted, overwhelmed, it's too much, or whatever it is, to recognize, when am I taking in someone else's energy that's not mine to take in? And so looking at it instead of a circle, that infinity symbol, and that point of intersection being where I get to return what's yours and keep what's mine.
Oh, okay. So I'm blown away for multiple reasons. It was so hard to hold it in because you're saying.
I saw your face. You're like, you kept wanting to talk. I saw.
Yeah, like I'm not just like yes, you preach. So literally today had the most fantastic client, and I'm so lucky and fortunate. And this particular client was sharing with me the ways in which her interest in other people, particularly people she loves, manifest in her own life. So in her love. And so when they have a problem, she has a deep desire to relieve them of that problem, whether it's psychological or emotional or physical. And then it shows up in her own psychological, emotional, physical, material world. And I have had that experience myself over the course of my life, to your point, many, many times. And in the early years of my practice, it was becoming such a real problem that I thought maybe I'll have to quit, the business altogether, because whatever they would share, I would start to experience in my own life. And it was like, this is a problem, right? So yes, you're right about that. The other thing is that one of my favorite teachers has a philosophy called the infinite way. And so what I was sharing in that particular conversation I mentioned a little earlier, and what has been very close to my heart, is this infinity symbol for precisely the reason you described. And also because I think in my life, at least, I've often tried to pour from my own self and my own life, this like human side, which is a very limited, finite bank of whether it's love or generosity or whatever it is that I want to pour into someone else. It's very finite. But when I've been able to identify or live in and as that essence, move and abide in my essential core self more consistently, that it feels more like something is pouring through you that is infinite in and of itself, right? It doesn't feel like you don't wear out as easily. It doesn't, you don't burn out as easily. And you seem to have or be able to give more without at the same time taking on so much, particularly the problematic stuff from the other person or from the world. And I've always aspired to live more and more from that place, from that essence, so that I could be more generous and take less on from the world.
Well, and if you take less on, there's less to pour from you, and when it pours through you, it feels like an open vessel versus, okay, it just feels like water flowing, right? It just feels like there's movement without constriction or without attachment or without judgment.
That's right. Without ego and without a real sense of I'm doing it. Like it's me that's doing it and I've got to force my will and I've got to do it through power and through might, or even through human intelligence. I can sort of rest and relax and live from that essence where I'm inspired in spirit, and I can let it all flow from me or through me, not from me, through me,
right,
and not from me. And still working at that.
So for people listening who are like, okay, Jory and Rob, I hear what you're saying. I'm subscribing to what you're saying. I'm like bowing down to what you're saying, but how do I do that?
Great question.
What would you say is the first answer to? Because I've got some ideas, but you go first.
Okay. You practice
that way I can sit here and like hold my mouth as all the things that I know are going to be in my head. So go ahead. You first.
Gosh, totally. We're basically sharing out of one mind anyway.
Yeah.
First, I'd say it's practice when it's easy, right? Practice when it's easy. You don't want to try and learn how to swim in the middle of a storm, and you don't want to try to live from infinite intelligence, essence, live in spirit, like when you're faced with something really tough or challenging or adverse, or someone else is really suffering. That's when it'll be very difficult. But if you can practice when it's easy, it'll be easy when it's normally or supposed to be difficult. That's number one. Two, do it for its own sake, because it's so joyful, and because you love the peace and the love and the joy itself that you experience in and of it, like for intrinsic reasons. And then that results generally take care of themselves. I think it's easy to get in there and want to do this thing so that you get all these incredible outcomes, which is nothing wrong with that. But if you can find more pleasure and joy in doing it for its own sake, you find that, the future takes care of itself in that way. Third, for me, it's like, instead of trying to think it through, focus more on feeling it through, which means that I am an over analytical human being for the most part. Very,
Yeah,
I know, never. We could never be in this conversation, right? Otherwise. And
I am too. So, we're in good company.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And I've discovered that it's great for me to read my books. I like to have my conversations and everything like that. And then I've discovered that, first of all, I'm able to either digest it or remember that it's always been in there all along, when I am able to get out of my head and just be in my heart, my spiritual heart, more consistently for its own sake. So those are the top three
So
I
how
guess.
do you get out? How do you, not anyone, how do you personally get out of your head and into your spiritual heart? What does that look like for you?
I call it practice in the presence of God, but it's simply feeling into the peaceful aliveness in my body that is life force or life intelligence or life source itself. So the energy that's in your hands, your feet, I just feel it as, I guess, a current. And I feel into that for its own sake. And I spend time with that and as that, the same way I'd spend time with you or my mom or a friend, not to get anything out of it, not to achieve anything through it, but simply because it feels so good to do. I just like to do it all day.
And
So
it
that's
sounds like it's through presence.
absolutely, it is presence, capital P. Yes, that's right. So it's my presence and divine presence. It's one presence. Yes, it's practicing the presence.
Yeah.
What about you?
What about me? By the way, I love your practice when it's easy. When you and I were on a summit together, you said that and I wrote that down. And that has come up for me a couple of times personally, where like I was trying to break a habit and I'm like, okay, but it's not easy right now. So why am I trying to break this habit when it's hard? Like that is only going to land me in not feeling successful and then go back to the limiting belief that I can never do this. So I think that one is overstated in its simplicity, but misunderstood in its power.
Oh, beautifully said, as always. Yeah, it's really
Thank
powerful.
you. But yeah, so for me, it's, I think for me, everything comes back to awareness with compassion versus awareness with judgment. Like the awareness of, I need to do less right now. And can I let that be okay? And noticing my tendency to want to do in order to feel accomplished, right? That alignment over achievement sign of idea. And really honoring just how much less is more.
Oh, I love that so much. How powerful is that?
Yeah. And I mean, more can be more, but more is not better. And more is a misguided goal.
You're absolutely right about that.
I mean, you and I were chatting before we started about, the amount of clients that we have in a week, right? And to me, that's a sign of capital S success. I, have this number of people who I serve each week. You have your number, and that feels successful. And we both said we like to cut that down by about a quarter.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And when we choose to step into that alignment for all the right reasons, that to me is a bigger capital S success. Right?
Absolutely agreed. Because, and I think it may have been Tony Robbins who said this, but it's like success without fulfillment. Not that we're not fulfilled overall, but without failure, right? Is failure. And you're right about that. It's a capital S success and a capital S for soul and for true self, right? That's that success. It's like the true self that's successful, the true soul. It's the soul inspired kind of success that we all most love and want, where you don't feel like you're consistently either depleted or you're giving, from this very limited finite bank that you have to someone else. And it's a sort of back and forth of they give to me, I give to them. It's more of a flowing experience. Yeah.
So yesterday I had 7 clients, and 4 of my 7 clients, we had almost the exact same conversation. Does that ever happen with you where you like have themes that just are like, okay, let's have this exact conversation again? And by the 4th one, I got really skilled at my spiel, my spiel. But I often see that that's a pattern in which, right, these themes keep occurring because there's no accidents. Of course, it's what people are experiencing, and I am that conduit to which it comes through, right? So I think it's worth to share here, because I think this goes right into what we're talking about one of the things that can prevent people from stepping into this essence or self alignment. And what I talked about 4 out of 7 times yesterday was this idea around boundaries and balance. And the challenge with boundaries is we often don't enact a boundary because we fear the other person not adhering to our boundary, it feeling like a rejection, it feels like a dismissal, or like this hand up, you can't do this. So we don't enact a boundary. even when it's in our best self-interest and service to self and healing and peace and alignment, all the things, right? We don't enact a boundary because we don't want to hurt the other person's feeling. And we therefore put their potential, I don't even know if it's going to be real or not, their potential hurt, rejection, however someone might be on the other end of a boundary, we put that emotion higher than our emotion, in which we've then made the conscious / unconscious choice to abandon our own self in favor of serving or rescuing another person's potential fear of rejection.
Wow. Yes.
And when we recognize that this is the implication of not holding boundaries, that when we don't hold a boundary, we are abandoning our own self in favor of serving someone else's unresolved traumas or needs.
Oh, boom, truth bomb. So gosh, there's so much there that resonates. One is that, to your point, that themes tend to reoccur over and over again, especially in the same day. This theme has been a consistent one with me today, and my conversations with clients and others. And to your point, and you said it and expressed it so eloquently and so poignantly, self-betrayal is still betrayal. Self-sacrifice is still sacrifice. In fact, I'd argue it's the highest sacrifice and it's the highest betrayal, because if you sacrifice and betray yourself, who's left to help other people? Right. Who's left to help the world, right? And so, to your point, that isn't the wisest or the most effective or the most efficient way to help self or others or the world, like sacrificing yourself, abandoning yourself, betraying yourself. And to a large extent, when you do that, quote unquote, well or effectively, we actually do a great disservice to others without realizing or recognizing it, because we do coach or train or lead them away from their own source of strength and power and resilience. And we also model for them how not to set proper boundaries, right? And
hence comes in the word balance, the flip, of the boundaries and balance, the balance of honoring my needs as real and true and holding space for the implication it might have, and consciously weighing out, why am I doing what I'm doing versus defaulting to self-abandonment.
Yes, you're so right about that. And that's why it's so important to set those boundaries, because it also can give you clarity around the importance of setting those boundaries, because you get to step back, and in that quiet time, alone time, self-care time, you get to look at your life and life itself from a much bigger, broader perspective. And now you can see it so much more holistically and so much more clearly. It's like, wait, I know I got caught up in my day or my week or whatever, and I thought that it was the end of the world if I didn't see those 45 clients or 100 clients or whatever it is, right? But when you step back, you say, wait, the point and purpose of all of this effort and all of this work is bigger than just pruning here and there. I want to do something bigger and better and more powerful and effective than that. And I also want it to be sustainable, right? And so, yes, you're right about that on all levels. It's like the boundary setting is good for us, it's good for others, it's good for clarity on both, for both parties. And also, it's the only way to maintain or sustain your effort.
Yeah, it's so true. And this is something I've been working really hard as a mom to teach my teenage daughters is, how I would define mindful communication, right? So many people get stuck and say, well, I can't say that to someone, because they're never going to change. And it's a really interesting question. We come back to boundaries because oftentimes we have to have a verbal conversation to enact a boundary, right? And oftentimes people believe, oh, well, they're not going to agree to that, or they're not going to like that, or they're not going to change as a result of my request. So oftentimes, because we think that a person is not going to agree, change, or approve of our request by drawing our boundary, we therefore stay silent. And the silence becomes acceptance of a dynamic that's not working, at least for us, right? So I've always encouraged my daughters, speak your truth, and it's okay for you to disappoint somebody.
Oh, yes.
It is. When my daughters were little, elementary school, there was a mom who I would see at drop off in the morning. And there was one day I don't know why, but she like yelled at me from across the parking lot, "Hey, Jory, you're going to disappoint somebody today." And it was like, you know what? You're probably right. I'm probably going to disappoint somebody today. And we just took that as a part of being human and embraced it. And so like for the rest of the school year, we'd see each other, we'd wave and be like, go disappoint somebody today, because it was honoring, we can't please everybody. And so this idea of speaking up for our needs feels really scary when our needs don't get met, then we feel shut down from that open communication or authentic expression of self. And it's not about getting the other person to change. It's not even about getting someone to agree to your boundary you're setting. It's about using your voice. And if we only used our voice when the other person was going to be in agreement, we might speak up very rarely.
That's right. That's right. You very rarely, maybe never, right? And with certain relationships, I love what you're sharing here, and I love what you're teaching your daughters, because it's so powerful and so important. And I agree too. I mean, I would say that one of the intentions I've set, and occasionally I'll share it with people, even if they can't receive it, which is that one of my highest intentions is to disappoint you as early and as often as humanly possible, so that I break you of this idea that I could at all be responsible, or should be responsible, for your happiness or your love or your peace or how you feel. And that being said, once that expectation is dropped, I can be so much more supportive, and you can receive it in a way that you otherwise couldn't. Like one expression I use for myself first and foremost, but also with friends and even clients, is no expectations, only appreciation. No expectations, only appreciation. And by that, I just simply mean precisely what you're saying, which is like, the only way to not disappoint anyone is to do nothing and say nothing. You'll still disappoint them, I promise, right? There's that.
Well, then you're going to be disappointing yourself in the meantime.
Exactly. And we don't need to be understood. You don't have to be understood, and you don't have to be or have people agree with you in order for you to own and honor your own boundaries still. Yes. Right? It's like, communicate it. Yes, by all means, communicate. It's the right thing to do, and it probably gives you peace of mind to do it. Also, don't be too attached to whether they agree or understand. Realize and recognize you did your part, and now it's up to you to just make sure that you abide by those boundaries for you. You know, the world is going to go on either way, and other people don't have to understand or agree with anything that you do or don't do. And you can still go right on along doing it because you know what's right for you.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing. And I think the good news is you can start this at any age, at any time, whenever you decide you no longer are going to tolerate abandoning your own self in effort of pleasing others, whether, you know, it's personal relationships or even client relationships, or the relationship inside your head with your inner critic.
Oh,
right? Like, I think it extends to all of these things. I had this really fascinating awareness recently. So my daughters are 16 and 18 and a half. And
impossible, by the way, but nonetheless, continue.
Thank you.
Possible.
Yes.
Yes.
So they've recently gone through some things in which they've really spoken their truth. And I'm kind of in awe of it. And it's interesting because I've done so much growth. And I recognize as well where I am still developmentally stuck in certain relationships that feel like that was where I developmentally stopped. And I recently realized in one particular scenario, my daughters are older than I am in that particular dynamic because I stopped developmentally at a younger age than the age that they are. And I'm like learning from them, but yet I taught them. But like, it's been this fascinating self-awareness to even say, yeah, I do this work and I can still get really stuck. And when I recognize I'm developmentally stuck in this space and speaking my truth feels really hard, yeah, it can be hard and it can be okay.
Oh, so good.
Such huge awareness.
Huge aware. It can be hard and it can be okay. That's exactly right. And everyone in our lives, independent of age, is a personal trainer, right? They're a personal trainer for, I don't want to call it our soul, maybe, but for our human self. And so, like, yes, absolutely. That's so powerful. I love you sharing that, Joy. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really, that resonates with me.
Well, and I hope it resonates with everyone else to say we show up differently in different relationships based on some of our history with that person and the developmental stage that in which whether the relationship was formed or a trauma was formed, and to know that it's okay if there's still certain relationships where maybe we struggle in this boundary and balance, and at least the awareness to recognize it exists is almost enough.
Yes, yes. And you're making a great point here also, which is that like it's a moving target. This balancing thing is a moving target. So you're going to always be calibrating and recalibrating. It's a pendulum, you know, and it only remains a functioning pendulum if it continues to move a little. So it's going to move a little. You know, things show up, and suddenly you've got a windfall of money, and you can do different things. And now you've got a little less money, or
Right.
you've got something going on, or whatever. So, you know, there is no place, at least that I know of, on this planet that we might call perfect in the sense of perfect balance or a perfect sweet spot. It's a continually ever evolving experience that you're always calibrating and recalibrating for. And so there's no need to worry too much because you can't get it wrong and you never get it right. So you just try to do the best you can with where you are and enjoy where you are no matter where you are.
Exactly. Years ago, I created a curriculum when I taught mindfulness courses in the community. I really created the mindfulness intro class I wish I could have taken. And I've been teaching it ever since. But every week was a 6-week course. I would have, you know, everyone would arrive and I would ask them, can you name a mindful moment you had from the previous week? Like since we last saw each other. And Rob, there were so many people who would be like, you know what, Jory, I had no mindful moment this week. Like I wasn't present. I wasn't, you know, aware, like I had no mindful moment. My response to them was, the mere fact that you are aware that you weren't aware in and of itself is awareness. So you just naming you weren't mindful is in fact you practicing mindfulness, because otherwise before this class, you wouldn't even have the awareness that you weren't aware.
Huge. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. For you to even acknowledge that you might have been absent is presence.
Yes.
For you to acknowledge that you weren't mindful is mindful. That's been phenomenal.
Yeah. So to acknowledge, like to bring it full circle, to acknowledge I'm depleted is actually self-care. To acknowledge I'm moving from effort is actually moving from essence.
Oh, how powerful is that? Oh,
Yeah.
that's tweetable. You need to get that
Yes.
down. Get that one. That's really good. Really good.
But I think maybe we're all just making it harder than it has to be.
Oh, I'm convinced of that. I'm convinced of that. Like I know for certain, I personally have complicated life and work and all the things, right? Over and over and over again. And it's also why you see, like we talked about this before, I think, you know, like in nature, really, most of nature is perfectly blissful. And it's only people that have made a problem out of their own existence. Like people are the only living creatures that have made a problem out of their own existence. It's wild. You know, we've got all these things going on. We attack each other and we kill and we rape, all these things. And in the, you know, animal kingdom and the plant, you don't have any of that going on, depression and suicide, all those things, right? And so, yes, the human mind is an incredibly powerful problem-solving tool, and it's an equally powerful troublemaker.
Yeah, it is. It is. I could talk to you for hours. I want to wrap up by asking, I'm really curious, this is me just being nosy. What does a peaceful, perfect day look like to you? Like wave your magic wand, you are anywhere in the world with whomever, like where are you in which you are in a place or doing a thing that you are full alignment? Like where is that one place that you get to go to, or even in your own mind? Like, do you have a, like your perfect day somewhere? What is that?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the answer that will at first sound cliche, and I promise you it's not.
I believe you. I know it's going to be, but I already believe you.
Yes. So that place is God or my own soul. Genuinely mean that. Like, so in other words, when I'm not lost in any discursive thought, I'm not thinking at all, and I'm just tapped into and turned on to like the peaceful aliveness of my own body for its own sake, just call that God. Like, so blissful. It's so blissful. Now, that being said, I also very much love being at a pool or a beach where it's pretty humid and hot and I have probably too many books that I will never get through, but sitting right next to me. And I just get to spend most of the day there, just reading my books, taking a nap, and probably following up with a conversation here and there, peppered in with someone, well, in fact, with you, Jory.
Yes.
I mean,
I know we talked about this last time. We just need to be sitting by a pool or the ocean having these conversations.
Exactly. Like, it's just ideal. You don't get any better than that as far as I'm concerned in my life.
Know.
So yeah, that's what it is for me. What is that equivalent for you?
I am at my most happiest when I am in Big Sur, California. Have you ever been to Big Sur?
I have not. I need to go.
So Big Sur is on the coast. It is about 40 miles south of Carmel. Once you leave Carmel, there's no cell service, and you're on a winding road on the cliffs of the ocean, beautiful hillside, and there's two places there. One is a restaurant called Nepenthe, which back in the 60s used to be where the beatniks used to hang out. So you can feel the soul of the history, of the creativity, of the essence of trying to understand life at this location. And the restaurant has like a 270-degree view, like more than 180, maybe not 270, more than 180 because of the where it's located. And the restaurant is designed to just stare at the ocean, and half of it's outside. And and the food's amazing, but it's like rustic all at the same time. And then about 10 minutes south is a place called Esalen, which is a retreat center, which is, it's my happy place. And there's natural hot springs built into the cliffside. And when I first was there, I was like, if I go missing, just know that this is where I am, but don't find me. Don't come look for me, but just know this is where I am. And spending hours in the natural hot tubs that are literally overlooking the ocean during the day when I've seen whales and pods of dolphins, or I've been in the tubs at all hours of the night when there's been shooting stars or rain. Like that, like, put me there, and that is where everything else seeps away. So actually for Mother's Day, which I know we're going to be putting this out in a couple weeks, but on Mother's Day, my daughters and I for the weekend, we're going down to Carmel, and Sunday on Mother's Day, I will be in Big Sur at Nepenthe, because that's just, oh, and then like if you want to, like, if I want to put the sweet like cherry on top, it's getting a massage while I'm at Esalen, overlooking the ocean. Like, give me a massage with the ocean view. I'm like in fucking heaven.
You're set. Oh, I'm glad that you shared yours after mine, because I feel like I can really upgrade mine. I'm just like, what she said.
But I think the reason I asked the question is because I think when people don't know, like, where could I be happiest? At least, like, even when I just go there in my mind, I feel that peace.
Isn't that the incredible thing about it?
Yeah.
Yes. You can just think of the place and you already feel it. I used to really struggle with that for a long time. I didn't know what would make me happy, where my happy place was. And I will say that one of the gifts of that was discovering that I didn't need to know right away. I could use my least happy place as, a pointer to that happier place. It was like, okay, I don't like being in cold weather. I don't want to be in a cold office somewhere and surrounded by people that are miserable doing things that I hate. What's the opposite of that? Oh, it wasn't quite the hot springs that you just mentioned, but I was getting there.
Okay, and I'm fully in alignment with yours too. I just can't deal with humidity. So give me a cool breeze, and then I'll be next to you at the pool.
Perfect,
with our stock of books in between.
We'll get one of those big Baywatch fans.
yes, there you go.
Industrial.
I really love our connection. I love talking with you. I always think these conversations are so rich of so much people can just harness out whenever they're ready to hear it. Right?
Facts. And I'm so deeply grateful and so overwhelmed with how much I appreciate you, how much I enjoy these conversations.
Thank you.
And the work that you do in this world. And I mean that, and who you are. Like, every time I connect with you, I get these soul shivers, and I just feel like so lucky and fortunate. So thanks for having me. Thanks for being my friend, and thanks for the conversation.
Thank you. And anyone who wants to know more about Rob, the link for more info will be in the show notes. And I can't wait to talk again. And one day we'll be sitting by that pool, and maybe we'll have a conversation that other people can tune into.
Exactly. I love that. I'm in.
All right. Take care, everyone.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.